All right, so we are here with Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hi, nice to be here.
Nice to have you finally here in the
Yeah,
summit live. Ivo and I have a lot of questions for you, and maybe we should start
absolutely.
by your background in the fintech space. A little bit of a background here.
Yeah, sure. So I was described by the Financial Times as like a veteran, which I'm not sure I'm quite old enough for that, but anyway, I guess reflects I have done a fair amount in this space. So and my first, I guess, got involved in fintech in 2013 when I sort of jumped out of Barclays
hmm
and was the first CEO for Oaknorth, which has been doing pretty well last few years. And I guess kind of opened my eyes to life outside of the big bank world and some of the new technology coming through. And ever since then, I guess I've had the bug. So both in some major banks as well as some startups, I've done a lot, right? So introducing new capabilities to places like HSBC, angel investing in startups like Penta, the
hmm
neobank in Germany. And yeah, I've been Revolut since July of last year, helping them to scale up and professionalize what they're doing,
hmm
and just kind of stepped back from an
hmm
executive position in Revolut to non-exec position and kind of taking on the CEO for a new SME bank in the UK. So yeah, never stop moving forward.
Definitely. So yeah, wow, so much to achieve and so relevant to our summit, which is basically gathering around all the fintechs, regulators, banks, neobanks from all over the world and the top leading nations of fintech. Yeah, maybe we should start from what you are leading exactly at Revolut, and then we will focus on this new thing, which is exciting even more for us to hear about.
I also got a very similar question. When I was browsing the CV was so long. All these big brands. Biggest names in banking. Fintech industry. I was kind of okay. There is CEO of Revolut, and there is like non-executive director. So I was kind of thinking, what does that mean? Also, your new position in Allica Bank,
Mm.
is it right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, it is. It is
So
Allica Bank. Yeah. So
Allica Bank, okay.
yeah, some Revolut, right? I was the group COO and CEO
hmm
of banking. So yeah, I joined kind of mid 2019,
hmm
and I guess the group probably in the 12 months before that had really started to experience just this broadening of the company with the sort of massive customer growth from the amazing European product market fit. So the customer base was starting to grow just so rapidly, right? 500,000 customers a month. Um,
Right.
and so I sort of came in to help, I guess, that scaling from I guess really the complexity of having a many country, many products, global financial technology company. Because I mean, so many fintechs are kind of single market, but as soon as you go multi-market, particularly outside Europe, you add a lot more complexity, particularly from a sort of regulatory and risk point of view. So, yeah, while I was at Revolut, we sort of moved from one licensed entity in the UK, which was covering all of Europe, to
hmm
having I think about 7 around the world. So places like Australia or Singapore, but also within Europe, places like Lithuania, as we preparing for Brexit, started to um, build additional capability in Europe. So yeah, I guess huge process there to try and ensure that you've got, I guess, the whole company, the whole infrastructure, kind of moving forwards at the same sort of pace. So you really keep delivering what customers want. Yeah, and I think over the period I was executive there, we went from 5 million customers to 13 million customers. So just massive growth, right? Massive. Um, and yeah, entered these new markets. We launched new products like stock trading, like youth accounts, like gold trading. So yeah, just this massive hyper growth scaling. I guess keeping that going as you go from sort of Revolut's now 5 and a bit years old, so from kind of nothing to global company in 5 years is just an amazing process. And then, yes, I'm still involved in a non-exec capacity and happy to be doing that. But with the onset of COVID, most of my career has been in SME banking and particularly in business lending. And so COVID has, I think, created more market dislocation certainly in the UK, I'm sure in many other markets as well, to the business finance industry than the global financial crisis did. So you have this just massively disrupted position where you've had a lot of supply disappear from the market because people have suffered loan losses, or people have had their wholesale funding pulled if they're a non-bank lender. And then you've had the governments inject lots of money, which has sort of distorted the market as well. And so you've got just this really unique set of circumstances where very, very significant supply-demand disruption. And then equally, very, very significant acceleration in terms of the customer expectation for digital. So, I mean, outside of the one-man bands are pretty much like consumers. Established SMEs, they're being sort of gradually kind of digitizing over the last few years, but they've been lagging consumer quite a lot. Whereas I guess what you see happen here clearly is just this pandemic completely impact the market and therefore create a step change in the use of I mean, clearly Zoom, like we're on today, but many other capabilities, because you can't go to the branch. That's not been a thing for multiple months. So I think there's just this unique combination of circumstance where, given most of my career has been in that business finance space, I felt I had to kind of go back into that on the back of what's happened and see if I can help.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the SMEs. I mean, it's huge, right? And you're seeing all kinds of new services and like how do you see this growing? Because it seems like there's a lot of focus right now in certain markets into that segment.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'm super happy because I've worked in this market for most of my career, and for most of the time it was so dull and so underserved and so just nothing was happening. Everyone ignored it. And then when was it? Maybe 2015, 16, 17.
Maybe Square, something like.
Yeah, it started to get going a bit, right?
Yeah.
Where you had, I guess in Europe, you had people like Izettle on the current account side.
Maybe Brex or something like that.
Yeah, they're probably more recent. Right? Actually, I would kind of probably go back to Holvey. I don't know if you know Holvey.
Holvey. Right.
I remember looking at them when I was at HPC back in probably 2015. So they're probably one of the earliest I came across there. And then in the UK, you've had like Tide and Coconut and Anna Money and Penta and Quanto and Contest in Europe. A whole bunch of people grew up probably from 2016, 17, 18 period. So, I mean, that makes me super happy that people are sort of trying to pay attention. And I think the general level of service there is just dramatically improved for your kind of one person, two people startup business, freelancer, etc.
Right.
I think though there's still like above that, no one's really done much yet. So I think people have been attracted by the volume of that sort of very, very small micro business because there's lots, right? In the UK alone, there's, I don't know, 4.5 million of those, 5 million of those. So it looks quite a lot like retail. And so people have applied, I guess, retail plus some slightly more sophisticated techniques. So Starling took their retail account and basically carbon copied it essentially for business and then have built onto that gradually over time. And now have a good proposition for micros. Yeah, so I think the micro space now feels like it's got a lot of people doing some pretty nice services. And it's also forcing the incumbent major banks to up their game, which is great as well, right? Because I always think the impact of fintech is one, what the fintechs themselves do, but also the fact they massively change the expectation on the big bank. But I do think like the mid-sized business segment is like, no one's doing anything for it at all right now. It's completely neglected. So that's kind of my own particular focus is.
And how do you how do you build that product with the community, with the businesses, how do you build like the tailor-made product to them, to this age? You mentioned COVID. How is your work right now in building this to be tailor-made for that segment?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a segment that wants both digital and human. I think that's quite an important part to make. I mean, if you're a business owner of a £3 million turnover business, you A, have some quite sophisticated needs, and B, it's your life, right? It's kind of your savings, your pension, everything you want. And so, yeah, it's pretty rare for someone to want just mobile only with nothing else. You're going to want some degree of person there who understands you, understands your industry, understands your business, and is a finance expert to go with your own business skills, because business people are rarely, you don't start a business to be an FD. So yeah, I think there's something interesting there about how you combine the best of digital with the best of human, and sort of amplify the human via the digital. And yeah, I think for that sort of more sophisticated business, that's where the answer lies. And I'd also say you need quite good understanding of risk, because again, you're kind of like your micro business. When you're lending, it's largely a lot like lending to a consumer, because there's not that much going on, and the ticket sizes are similar, like £10,000, £20,000, £30,000. If you're lending £500,000, £1 million, then the product's more sophisticated, the risk is more sophisticated. So it's much, frankly, for me, I think a much more interesting problem to solve in terms of the complexity there.
Yeah.
So is there some, new feature planned in Revolut business account, let's say?
Yeah. So Revolut, I think Revolut's been doing actually quite a good job in playing not just in the micros, but also into both SMEs and actually corporates. I think particularly on the back of, for example, the international payment capabilities, and the fact you can get a price plan where within the subscription you've got great value on the international payments. So given in a traditional bank, you might be charged in the UK £25 plus 2-3% FX spread on international payment. There's a lot of ability to disrupt that, and I know Revolut's seen quite a strong uptake in that space from a range of size of companies, right? Not just the micros who kind of are really using some different functionality there. So that's been impressive to see, and I know it's been powering some Revolut's growth. So I mean, for me, I'm then, as I'm going to move to my CEO of Allica job, I'm interested in. Listen, I don't want to compete head on with Revolut for international payments. They're pretty good at that. But kind of what's the other stuff that's not well served in that space? And as kind of mentioned, I think financing in particular is the space that is wide open right now, dislocated by COVID, complex risk. Client wants a person to speak to, not just digital, but you need digital to make the processes slick and automated and low cost. And so it's how do you combine all those factors together to provide a great solution to the different financing needs for a mid-sized business.
I wonder if we should also ask you here in this conversation about the whole open banking opportunities. There's a lot going on, obviously, from the UK, and I know that also at Revolut they partner up with TrueLayer. And how is it relevant to what you're doing right now? Yeah,
so listen, I love open banking. I like to think I played some very, very small part in it in the UK, because when the origin in the UK was the Competition and Market Authority, a regulator did an investigation into the big banks and how do you provide more competition. And I was part of that actually, and sort of said, look, you should open up API access to data, because look at travel. You look at the travel sector, and Expedia or whoever are basically providing price transparency and aggregation via API. to do something similar for banking. Hence, I think UK there, not just because of me, right? A whole bunch of people said the same, and then UK did open banking earlier than Europe. Europe's got PSD2, great, and a lot of the rest of the world is following, which is great. Though you probably also have to point to things like India with UPI that, frankly, you'd argue is ahead of Europe anyway. Yeah, open banking is great. Listen, it's a long-term thing. I think it's one of those classic phrases. I think it's Bill Gates. People overestimate what's going to happen in 2 years and underestimate what's going to happen in 10 years. And open banking is one of those, right? So the adoption and usage right now is some, but not amazing. But I think another 8 to 10 years, it will be transformational. So, yeah, and Revolut's done some nice stuff, right? I think we've often been one of the first to deploy it into the market. I think in Ireland, we were the first to deploy it in the market, got a lot of good attention there when we launched. And I think one of the great things about Revolut's platform is the ability to quickly deploy across multiple markets, because it's a standardized, centralized technology platform. So that ability to build here, because this market is probably the most advanced, that on open banking, that was UK, but on another product, it might be another market. And then if it works, kind of deploy it into multiple other markets, which I think is, well, it's a huge advantage over other fintechs in general, because if you're a single market fintech, you're going to struggle to compete with that. And it's a huge advantage over the major banks. I mean, I said I was with HSBC, and HSBC, 70 markets, but it's not a common technology platform. So it's super painful to roll things out into multiple markets. So
it's actually a good thing to mention. The difference, between HSBC and Revolut, how people think, what is the mentality,
Yeah, because I think in some ways Revolut's doing a lot of HSBC's core value proposition when you look at it, right? I mean, HSBC is wanting to be a global retail and commercial bank. And yeah, it's got big corporates and it's got trade finance and it's got investment banking. So put that to one side. But if you concentrate on that kind of retail and SME market, the value prop is very similar. I.e., international person or international company. Okay, HSBC is in more markets, but Revolut's, I think, 35 plus, and that will extend further. But yeah, I think people would say that the value prop in terms of value, as well as slickness of experience, is a bit better in one than the other. So I think there's an interesting threat there for HSBC's value prop over time as Revolut continues to grow.
Yeah. And we also look, during this summit, we're looking at other countries. I mean, of course, all of us, Europe and the UK, we're focused, and we interviewed the CEO of Revolut Australia today. But also we're looking to other markets, like, of course, Singapore, and trying to learn from each ecosystem. So from your overview, and I know you have lots of connections all over the world, what are the other markets? What are the interesting trends that we should look at too in the banking sector and the fintechs?
And it's like, I think that's been one of the great things at Revolut. So I had the kind of privilege of sort of hiring out our people around the world. So Matt in Australia is a great guy. And there's various others, right? So James Shanahan in Singapore, Ron Oliveira in the US, and so on. And I think really interesting then to work with these folk. And there's there's real commonalities, and there is specific differences between markets, and it's how you balance the two, which is interesting. And I'll just give an example. In the US, for example, free ATMs is a big thing, or get paid early using the slowness of the ACH system in the US is a big thing, whereas in Europe you've got pretty good faster payment rails typically. So there's kind of those sort of micro market differences, but I do think the sort of the headline stuff is very similar, and that's why I think Revolut's got a great place, because it sort of got this common technology platform that can be rolled out multi-market. I mean, I think I would say though, right, probably for me, the most interesting markets to look at are actually places like China and India. When it comes to fintech, they have often skipped a generation compared to the West. And probably one of the most interesting
Right.
few days of my life was in March 2017 when I sort of did a trip around China and went to Shanghai, saw Ping'an, went to Hangzhou and saw Ant Stroke Alley, and I went to Shenzhen and saw Tencent, and super
Intensive. Okay.
to kind of sort of just really understand a bit more about that. And everyone talks about it a lot these days, and I still think they are market leading, world leading on so many things. That whole sort of super app concept, the defragmenting the customer's life by bringing everything together in one place, and also providing great value around that. So I don't know, the mobile QR codes that allows that street vendor to accept payments, or the huge money market fund that Ali has to help the vast bulk of people save a bit of money and get some interest on it. I think some really interesting things they're doing there around super app concepts and customer value. And I think the same applies to India, right? Again, you look at India,
right.
UPI, the payments infrastructure, the digital identity scheme in India. I think, so these markets are often quite a few steps ahead of Europe or US.
Right.
And I think US actually in particular is, with a few exceptions, kind of actually behind Europe. So you kind of got to follow the sun in terms of how advanced some of the thinking and development is on fintech, I kind of say.
I also had very same experience in China. I also been in China, actually in the very same time, I think 2017 and also 2020. And what I learned, it's a basically different planet. Like they are using Union Pay, right? Alipay, WeChat Pay, all these services. And I was kind of asking myself if even like some companies like Revolut or maybe, different challenger, banks or players, if they will be even able to get to this market, because I don't think, because they have, like own, world, own regulatory and that stuff. So I think China is kind of impossible market, isn't it? Compared to India, because in India that will be possible to scale and grow, but I think China is kind of separated.
Generally fair. So, I mean, you look at the likes of WeChat or Ant, and they've got what 600 million or 800 million users already in their ecosystem. Kind of big, right? It's kind of big. I mean, I think Revolut's pretty cool with 13, but it's a little bit bigger. So taking that head on would be kind of stupid, I think it's fair to say. And you're right. I mean, the market can be quite closed. I mean, HSBC, it's the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, so it has some roots in China. But I mean, as broadly, I only really ever had 2-3% market share because it is quite a, I guess, nationalized, straight protectionized economy over there. So I know you look at people like Google and Facebook and Amazon have all struggled, I guess.
Right.
But I think it's more the lessons you can learn from some of that. And I agree with you, India is probably more open, and therefore you do see people like Walmart or Facebook trying to play quite hard in India. And I'd imagine it's probably for a Revolut, there's some angles of attack there as well, I guess, if you look at
and Brazil, right?
Well, listen, I mean, both are obvious markets in terms of market size, number of people, etc. And I think India's got quite significant corridors in and out of the country with the non-resident Indian population around the world and stuff. So there's some interesting stuff there. But I think right this minute, Revolut's very focused on the sort of current markets and trying to really capitalize on that, and places like the US, big market, and trying to make sure that works effectively before
but how to scale effectively, like when you still growing to some new countries, and when I'm browsing the jobs on Revolut, I'm still like, there are like hundreds open positions sometimes. So is it still effective? Is it still, how do culturally works, or the tools or priorities, or because I think it's just growing so fast, but isn't that hard to still like, kind of handle that, or the growth?
Yeah, well, yes, I think it's fair to say, right? Hypergrowth is hard to handle. I think COVID's given a bit of chance for sort of pause. Not pause, not the right word, right? I think it's pause on a relative sense, relative to hypergrowth. But like a bit of stock take, right? Because I mean, you hire 1,500 people, and how does culture work with that? Are all those hires good? So I know one of the things Nick is exceptional at is constantly trying to learn and improve. So he's always thinking about like, what have I just done? What's gone well? What improved? How do we then iterate that hard? So in some ways, COVID's given us a chance to focus on some of those dimensions like product and also culture, people. So I know Nick's been thinking very hard around that. The other thing I'd say Nick is very good at is trying to have documented processes and playbooks, which, yeah, I mean, if you're a 30-person, 50-person, 100-person company, you can get away without. If you're like 2,000, 3,000 growing fast, you just got, otherwise, how does anyone know what's going on when they join? Or how does anyone know what the way of working is?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, so
it can be kind of dangerous path, like to hyper growth.
Yeah, so I mean, there was lots of folks on that. I mean, some for me, some for Nick around how you get that in place. But both pre-COVID, but also like COVID just gives you that chance, a little bit of time to ensure you really optimize the sort of the scaling up.
Amazing. Before we end, I wanted to maybe focus on your current role and challenges.
Yeah.
If you can share anything from the roadmap. Again, you talked a lot about what's exciting for you on your way and your path right now into banking and creating new services for SMEs.
Yeah. So listen, I won't give too much away on the roadmap because I've got some thoughts, but I'm only like a few weeks in, so sort of I want to keep some of that in stealth mode for the moment.
Fresh, yeah.
But yeah, no, listen, I think I just come back to the point that there's a huge problem to be solved here. I mean, if you look at, say, the UK economy, you've got corporates, you've got SMEs, roughly 50-50 in terms of the economy. And then of like GDP, of turnover, actually of SMEs, the majority is in mid-sized companies, not in micros. So currently there's this big space that has not been properly solved for to date, and which has been massively impacted by COVID, and where there's this huge disruption to supply right now. So the irony is with the government schemes, which have been very necessary and I'm very supportive of, but they have, like, you always get this kind of crowding out effect. And like, saw some data recently that said that the third of businesses that have not been impacted by COVID, or in fact are growing faster because of COVID, are the people most struggling for supply of finance. And like, that's just screwed up, right? Yeah. You want growth coming out of this pandemic, then the businesses that are doing well must have finance to keep their growth going. Otherwise, there's no hope here. So I think just that problem is what I sort of come back to as I'm kind of starting out here, is how do we solve that in a highly scalable and efficient way? And then through solving that, you create balance sheet that creates income that gives you the funds to then do all the other great things that are in this sort of roadmap in my head.
Sounds very clear. Thank you very much. I mean, I feel like we can talk with you for hours about your experience, and like there's so much to get from you, also about other markets, and maybe we're going to do another follow-up interview. But good luck in your new role, and it sounds exciting. I'm definitely
maybe
interested in that.
If I can add some, last question, and that would be probably about like something totally different off topic of fintechs, something more personal, if I can ask, and it will be about time management, because I saw all of your roles, and I can imagine that there must, were times that were, really hard or stressful or that stuff. And even now you are as I'm reading, like you are CEO of Alicia Bank, and Revolut, like CEO Revolut, non-executive director, like 2 positions, right?
Yeah.
Currently, in 2
Yeah.
players. So how are you managing that, or your time management? What's the secret? What's your key? Or
Yeah, I think good question. I mean, I guess for some reason I've always been someone that's quite high bandwidth. So I think context switching is generally something people struggle with, right? Premise of Agile and Scrum, right, is don't do context switching. For some reason, I kind of have reasonably high bandwidth to cope with many different things going on in my head. But you also got to work pretty hard, right? I mean, there's no substitute for actually working quite a lot of hours. That's the crux of it. And so,
Sure.
yeah, I think therefore you've got to love what you do. You just got to have a massive passion for what you do, right?
Passion.
If your job you're doing doesn't fire you up and make you full of energy, then change job. It's always been my
Right.
thought.
Yeah, I think that's good ending. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think that's most important thing. Yeah, super important. Agree.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so
Back to Nero.
yeah, let's definitely follow up on that. I'm also very impressed by what you're doing, and I'm very, very happy we connected. And I think it's relevant for all our participants and people here on the summit, which is a matchmaking summit. Basically, we have regulators here. We have people who are leading neobanks, banks, fintechs, payments from all segments from all over the world. Some of them from other markets that are not that developed. And how people can reach up to you. Where can they find more information about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So probably the best is LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm on there. I sort of sometimes get deluged with messages. So if I'm a couple of days delayed, then apologies. But I always try and reply if people do DM me, unless it's like supplier thing. Don't random suppliers. No, thank you. But if it's like actually, hey, you're after a bit of advice or whatever, then yeah, I'll always try and reply.
Great. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.